This sort of falls into another topic that I wanted to discuss with you guys. I'm busy working on a video where I'm talking, where I'm specifically diving into the biggest lore mistakes Blizzard have ever made, right? And we're going sort of way back into stories about the canon, choices about narrative, choices about all sorts of things, and just sort of like the 5 or 6 or 7 biggest blunders. So the things that really altered the way the story was supposed to go in a way that maybe backed them a little bit into a corner. I don't know when that video will be out, but that's the video that I'm currently working on. So you asking me about Outland just now really made me sort of think about this a lot more, because one of the biggest mistakes I think Blizzard ever made was with the Old Gods. It's actually number 3 on my list, is the Old Gods. You see, I think the Old God storylines suffer from what I would consider to be short-term thinking, or maybe even the short-term fallacy, if we can use a very fancy word for it. It's the idea that we'll always be able to come up with something new, so we don't need to worry too much about the future. The future will worry about itself. When you think of the Old Gods have been with us since the manuals of Warcraft. The first mentions we have of the Old Gods is in the manual of Warcraft 3, where we learn about these Old Gods that exist on the planet. The Old Gods, almost every single time, actually every single time, are killed off unceremoniously within a single patch. You go to Cthulhu at the end of Classic, killed off in a single patch. Yogg-Saron, a little bit of, well, actually, yeah, second or third raid of Wrath of the Lich King, killed off in a single patch. You go to N'Zoth, killed off at the end of Battle for Azeroth in a single patch. And you ask yourself, okay, you have these 3 bosses that are clearly... Now, I think by the time we got to N'Zoth, they had already screwed up so much with the first 2 that they just realized, you know what, we may as well just end them. In their bloodline, it's good to go. No questions asked. But there's a couple of things that really harmed those choices. Did some irreparable harm to the lore and also to the understanding of the world around us. The first is, if we could just kill these Old Gods within a single patch, were they really ever that scary? And this must have been a question that some of you have asked yourself before. If we literally went in and finished off these Old Gods, these dudes that once upon a time ruled the whole of Azeroth, and we finished them off within a single patch, were they really that big of a deal? And then that immediately opens up a new can of worms. The new can of worms being, how can we, mortals, kill the Old Gods within a single patch without doing any harm to Azeroth, and yet the Titans, who are supposedly far more powerful and far more intelligent than we are, couldn't kill the Old Gods? Instead, they were forced to imprison the Old Gods because trying to kill the Old Gods nearly killed the planet. So you sort of had to have this thing of, okay, you've invented a reason for why the Titans could not kill all of the Old Gods. But then you seemingly forgot about the reason for the Old Gods not being killable the second the players went to kill them. I think this is a fundamental flaw, and I think if Blizzard could do it all over again, I think if Metzen could do it all over again, if you gave Metzen a secret, a remote like this one with a rewind button for life, he would rewind to that first decision to kill Cthulhu, and he would say, no. We're not killing Cthulhu permanently. We're going to do something else. And the reason for it is the Old Gods are so rich in the kinds of stories that you can tell with them, and just so cool as characters. I mean, what is the one thing in the lore of World of Warcraft that has sparked more conversations, conspiracy theories, and speculations than any other item in World of Warcraft canonical lore? The Whispers. Players clearly love the Old Gods. See, the Old Gods are weird. They're strange. They're different. They offer so many potential storylines. They're so fun to play around with. So I do think that that may have been Blizzard's biggest blunder, is killing off the Old Gods in the way that they allowed for it to happen. I think a much better approach would have been that we didn't kill the Old Gods, but instead just pushed them back into their prisons, or, even bigger than that, we freed them. So there is an argument to be made that the Old Gods were not, as it were, stuck in their prisons, but more their prisons kept them out of Nyalotha. And so by us killing them inside those prisons, we freed their souls in order to go into Nyalotha. Now, it's not impossible that Blizzard can still go with a story like that. Remember, the Dark Heart of Xal'atath, where does it go? We don't know where the Dark Heart goes. We kind of know that it doesn't go into the realms of the Void. But what if it goes into Nyalotha? And what if what Xal'atath is busy doing? Because remember, Xal'atath is called the Harbinger. The Harbinger of the Void. What if Xal'atath's role and job is to feed power into the Dark Heart, thereby feeding the Old Gods, so that the Old Gods can be powerful enough to once again manifest themselves? And this is why Xal'atath went all around the world, tapping every source of ancient void magic she could get her hands on, because the Old Gods require this in order to be reborn in their fullness and in their full power. I think that would be a really cool story to explore. I think that could be a really cool story to explore. There's also, and we're going to cover this topic in a second, because there's even more evidence that the Titans really should not be trusted than there's ever been. It's actually interesting to me at this point that people still want to argue about the Titans being trustworthy or not. Do you find the Titans or the Old Gods to be more of our allies? So, Ashley, I don't find anyone to be our allies. And I think it's very important that people accept this. I think the problem for me, narratively speaking, when we start talking about allies or friends, is it closes avenues to potential storylines that doesn't need to be closed. Now, by that, I don't mean that we don't need allies, but we should find our allies in fellow mortals. Because with mortals, you can always just bring a new mortal into the fray and make a cool story around them. But with these big sort of cosmological beings, I'm almost always going to err on the side of let them have their own interests and allow their interests to sometimes coincide with ours and other times completely break from our interests. In the moments where it coincides with ours, we get this sort of symbiotic relationship that we've had with the Titans for quite some time. But should our interests sort of become opposing to that of the Titans, then that symbiotic relationship can very quickly turn into a very hostile relationship with the Titans. That's something that I prefer from a storytelling perspective, especially when it comes to the cosmological beings, because I think there's some incredible storylines that you can tell if the Titans are not good. So if the Titans are not friends, there's some incredible storylines that you can tell. Pretty much in the same vein that the Old God storylines have been so much cooler than that of the Titans. I think if you went around and you asked 1,000 WoW players that care about the lore, who are your favorite characters, I think you'd be very hard-pressed to find a lot of people saying the Titans. I think most people will say either Sylvanas or the Old Gods or, Arthas. People like villains. And people like specifically villains with a lot of layers. And the Old Gods have that in spades. Because the Old Gods aren't just your bog standard Disney villain. Every single one of the Old Gods have these weird ideas. The way they speak to you, it's not full-blown evil, but it's kind of evil, right? And so you're sort of going, do I trust you or do I not trust you? Well, what's the right play here? Because you say a lot of things that make sense to me, but I also kind of wonder if you just want to say this because you're lying to me, right? That's sort of what you get when you create this neither friend nor foe approach to characters, which I think you don't have if you just have straight up friends. Yeah, it's a little creepy, right? Gilgamesh, thank you very much. I appreciate that, sir.